The nurse was exhausted. 12-hour hospital shift done, driving home at 6 a.m. to get his daughters ready for school. 3 jobs, 4 years of this grind. Alone. Then he saw it. Motorcycle down, man bleeding, dying. Most people would call 911 and keep driving. Not Mike. He stopped, assessed injuries with professional precision, applied tourniquet that saved the man's life, stabilized his spine, stayed until paramedics arrived, then left without giving his name. Just did what's right, he said. Gotta get my daughters. What Mike didn't know, he just saved the president of the Devil's Souls Motorcycle Club, a man who took life debts seriously, very seriously. When Reaper woke 3 days later and learned a stranger saved him, he made one call. Find that man. Learn everything. We owe him a life. Time to pay it back. This story will touch your heart. Subscribe and like now and experience it with us. Michael Chen, everyone called him Mike, was 38 years old and drowning. Not in water. In responsibility, in exhaustion, in endless work. He was a single father raising 2 daughters alone. Emma, 12, Sophie, 9. Smart, beautiful girls who deserved better than what he could provide. 4 years ago, his wife Rachel left. Just walked out, ran off with a car salesman she'd been seeing secretly for months. Left a note. I can't do this anymore, don't look for me. That betrayal was devastating, but worse came after. Mike discovered Rachel had accumulated $85,000 in secret credit card debt. Shopping, gambling, whatever she'd been doing, all in both their names. He was legally liable. He had to sell their house to cover part of it. Moved into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in a dangerous Detroit neighborhood, all he could afford. The remaining $45,000 in debt hung over him like a sword, monthly payments crushing his budget. To survive, Mike worked 3 jobs. Primary job, registered nurse at Detroit Community Hospital, night shift, 4 nights weekly. Secondary job, Uber driver, filling hours between nursing shifts. Third job, pizza delivery on weekends. Combined income barely covered rent, food, debt payments, basic necessities. He slept maybe 3 hours daily, sometimes 4, if lucky. Exhaustion was his permanent state. But his daughters needed food, clothes, school supplies, stability. So he worked endlessly. Emma and Sophie stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez, their neighbor, before and after school when Mike worked. She was kind, charging minimal rates he could barely afford. The girls understood Dad was always working, always tired, always stressed, but he loved them. They knew that. November 15th, 2024, Friday morning. Mike finished his 12-hour shift at the hospital at 6 a.m., exhausted, needed to get home, shower, pick up the girls from Mrs. Rodriguez's, get them breakfast and ready for school, then sleep 2 hours before afternoon Uber shift. He took the back route home. Quieter, less traffic. Michigan Avenue was too congested at this hour. Mile marker 47 on Route 12, deserted secondary road. Then he saw it, a motorcycle, Harley Davidson, big, black, lying on its side in the road, and a man, large, maybe 6'2", 260, lying motionless in the street, blood pooling around him, lots of blood. Most people would have called 911 and kept driving, too dangerous to stop. Not their problem. Let professionals handle it. Mike wasn't most people. He was a nurse, trained to save lives, and more importantly, he was decent. Couldn't drive past someone dying. He pulled over, grabbed his personal first aid kit from the trunk, always carried one, ran to the man. Assessment time. Mike's training kicked in immediately, overriding exhaustion. The man was unconscious. Leather vest, patches visible. Reaper, president. Devil's Souls MC, a biker, Hell's Angels affiliate probably. Intimidating, even lying injured. Mike didn't care about patches. He cared about saving lives, vital signs first, pulse weak but present. 60 beats per minute, should be 70-80 resting. Respiratory rate shallow, 12 breaths per minute, should be 16-20, not good but survivable if treated fast. Injuries visible, head wound, bleeding from scalp laceration. Possible skull fracture, Left leg bent wrong, compound fracture, bone protruding through skin. Blood spurting arterially from leg wound. That was the immediate threat. Arterial bleeding kills in minutes. Mike pulled off his belt, wrapped it around Reaper's upper thigh. Tight. Tourniquet. Standard battlefield medicine. The spurting slowed, then stopped. Bleeding controlled. That bought time. Next, stabilize cervical spine. Motorcycle accidents often cause spinal injury. Moving patient wrong causes paralysis. Mike rolled his jacket, positioned it carefully under Reaper's neck. Improvised cervical collar. Not perfect, but better than nothing. He pulled out his phone, called 911. "This is Michael Chen, registered nurse. I'm at mile marker 47 on Route 12. Motorcycle accident. Single vehicle, male, approximately 45 to 50 years old, unconscious, head trauma, compound femur fracture with arterial bleeding, bleeding controlled with tourniquet, possible spinal injury, neck stabilized, vitals unstable, need paramedics and trauma transport immediately. ETA 12 minutes, dispatcher said. 12 minutes. Mike could keep someone alive for 12 minutes. Reaper stirred, eyes fluttered, consciousness returning briefly. "Hey, brother," Mike said gently. "Stay still. You're hurt. Help's coming. You're going to be okay. I'm a nurse. I've got you. Just stay with me." Reaper's eyes focused slightly on Mike. Tried to speak. "Who?" "It doesn't matter. You crashed. You're hurt. I'm helping. Stay still. Don't move your neck or leg. Paramedics are coming." "Hurts. I know. You've got a broken leg and head injury, but you're alive. You're going to stay alive. I promise. Just breathe. Stay calm." Reaper passed out again. Mike monitored vitals continuously. Pulse stabilizing slightly. Breathing improving. Good signs, sirens. Finally, paramedics arrived in ambulance and fire truck. "What have we got?" the lead paramedic asked, jumping out. "Michael Chen, RN from Detroit Community. Found him unconscious. Applied tourniquet to left femoral artery. Was bleeding out. Stabilized cervical spine. Vitals initially critical, now stabilizing. Pulse 65, respiration 14. Head trauma, probable skull fracture. Compound left femur fracture. Possible internal injuries. He regained consciousness briefly. GCS maybe 10. He needs trauma surgery fast." The paramedic looked at the tourniquet, the improvised collar, Mike's calm, professional demeanor. "You saved his life. That arterial bleed would have killed him in 5 more minutes. Good work. Just doing what's right. I need to go. Got daughters to pick up for school. You've got him from here. We've got him. Can we get your contact info for the report?" "Mike Chen. That's enough. Really gotta go." Mike got in his car and left. He'd done his job. Saved a life. Now back to his life. Daughters, responsibilities, endless grind. He didn't think about it again. Just another emergency, just another person helped. That was his job, his nature. What Mike didn't know, he'd just saved the president of one of Detroit's most powerful motorcycle clubs, and that man took life debts very, very seriously. Reaper woke 3 days later in Detroit Trauma Center ICU. His head pounded. His leg was in external fixation, metal frame holding shattered bone together. He had 32 stitches in his scalp, 3 cracked ribs, concussion, but alive. "Welcome back," a nurse said. "You're lucky. You almost died out there." "What happened?" Reaper's voice was rough. "Motorcycle accident. You hit ice on Route 12, went down hard. Someone found you. Applied a tourniquet that saved your life, called 911, stayed with you until paramedics arrived. Then he left. Didn't leave contact info beyond a first name. Mike something. Mike saved my life? Absolutely. The tourniquet stopped arterial bleeding. Without it, you'd have bled out before help arrived. He was trained, probably medical professional, knew exactly what to do. Reaper processed this. A stranger stopped, saved his life. Left without asking for anything. That was honor, rare, pure honor. And in biker culture, a life debt was sacred, absolute. You didn't ignore it. "I need to find him," Reaper said. "We don't have his info. Then I'll find it myself." 2 days later, Reaper was stable enough to make calls. He contacted Snake, his vice president. I need you to find someone. First name Mike, Asian guy, probably 30s or 40s, registered nurse. Was on Route 12 around 6 a.m. on November 15th. He saved my life. Find him. Snake mobilized resources. Devil's Souls had connections. Police, hospitals, DMV. Within 48 hours, they had a name. Michael Chen, RN at Detroit Community Hospital. Single father, 2 daughters. Address in rough neighborhood. Keep digging, Reaper instructed. I want to know everything. His situation, his life, his needs. We owe him. I need to know how to pay that debt properly. The investigation revealed Mike's situation. Divorced 4 years ago, wife left him with $85,000 debt he was still paying off, working 3 jobs to survive. Daughters Emma and Sophie, living in low-income apartment, struggling constantly. Good man dealt terrible circumstances. Reaper called an emergency club meeting. All 127 Devil's Souls members in Detroit chapter attended. Brothers, Reaper addressed them. A civilian saved my life. Asian nurse named Michael Chen. He found me dying on Route 12. Applied tourniquet that kept me from bleeding out. Stabilized my spine, preventing paralysis. Stayed until paramedics arrived, then left without asking for anything. Just said he had to get his daughters. That's pure honor. But when I investigated his situation, I learned he's drowning. Single dad, working 3 jobs, buried in debt from his ex-wife, barely surviving. This man saved my life, our president's life. We owe him, and we pay our debts. I want us to transform his life, completely, permanently, like he saved mine. Who's with me? Every hand raised, unanimous. When your president owes a life debt, the entire club honors it. What's the plan? Snake asked. We research his exact situation, debts, needs, dreams. Then we mobilize, pay off his debts, upgrade his housing, set up trust funds for his daughters, ensure he never has to work 3 jobs again. Give him what he deserves, stability, security, hope. We're changing his life, starting now. The mobilization was immediate and comprehensive. Devil's Souls had resources. Money from club businesses, connections throughout Detroit, influence. They used everything. Step 1, financial analysis. They discovered Mike owed $45,000 remaining on Rachel's debt, paying $800 monthly. That was crippling his budget. Club accountants prepared payoff plan. Step 2, housing assessment. His apartment was dangerous neighborhood, minimal security, barely adequate. They identified better option. 3-bedroom house in safe suburban area, good schools, stable community. Available for rent at $1,400 monthly. Same as his current place but infinitely better quality. Step 3, education planning. Emma and Sophie attended struggling public schools. Both were smart but needed better opportunities. Private school tuition at St. Catherine's Academy, $15,000 per child annually. Steep but transformative. Step 4, trust fund. The club voted to establish education funds for both girls, $100,000 each, invested conservatively, ensuring college was guaranteed. Step 5, income support. Mike needed to stop working 3 jobs. The club would provide supplemental income, $2,000 monthly, allowing him to keep nursing job only, spend time with daughters, live like a human instead of an exhausted robot. Total cost, approximately $350,000 initial, plus $24,000 annually ongoing. The Devil's Souls voted unanimously to fund everything from club treasury. This wasn't charity. This was honor, paying a life debt properly. When do we tell him? Snake asked. Soon, but we do it right. We don't just hand him money. We show him we understand his sacrifice, that we respect his honor, that we're grateful. This needs to be done with ceremony, with meaning. 2 weeks after the accident, Reaper was released from hospital. Still healing, but mobile with crutches, he was ready to meet Mike Chen properly. Mike had no idea what was coming. Life continued as always. Work, daughters, stress, exhaustion. He barely remembered stopping to help that biker. Just another emergency. Just another person helped. December 1st, Saturday evening. Mike was home with Emma and Sophie. Rare evening off from all 3 jobs. They were watching a movie together, precious family time he rarely got. Knock on the door. 7 p.m. Who would visit, unannounced? Mike opened the door. 10 massive men in leather vests stood there, Devil's Souls patches visible. At the front, the man from the road, the biker Mike had saved. On crutches but standing tall. Michael Chen, the man asked. Mike's heart raced. Were they here to threaten him, intimidate him? Had he done something wrong? Yes. Can I help you? I'm Reaper, president of Devil's Souls MC. You saved my life 3 weeks ago on Route 12. Applied tourniquet that kept me from bleeding out. Stabilized my spine. Stayed with me until help arrived. Then left without asking for anything, remember? Oh, yeah, you okay? You look better. I'm alive because of you. Doctors said I had maybe 5 more minutes before I'd have bled to death. You stopped that. You saved me. That creates a debt, a life debt. In our culture, that's sacred. We pay our debts, always. Can we come in? We need to talk. Mike hesitated, but stepped aside. 10 bikers entered his small apartment. Emma and Sophie watched nervously from the couch. Don't worry, girls, Reaper said gently. We're here to thank your dad. He saved my life. We're very grateful. He turned to Mike. We investigated you. Hope you don't mind. We needed to understand your situation to respond properly. We learned you're a single dad, working 3 jobs, buried in debt your ex-wife created, living here, he gestured at the apartment, because it's all you can afford, doing everything alone, barely surviving. Is that accurate? Mike felt exposed, vulnerable. Yeah, that's my life. But we're okay. We manage. You're not okay. You're drowning, working yourself to death. Your daughters barely see you. You're exhausted constantly. You deserve better. And because you saved my life, we're giving you better. Starting today. Reaper gestured to Snake, who handed Mike an envelope. Inside is a check for $45,000. That pays off your remaining debt completely. You're free. No more monthly payments crushing you. Mike stared at the check. $45,000. Freedom. I can't accept this. You can and will. There's more. We've arranged a house for you, 3-bedroom in Dearborn Heights. Safe neighborhood, great schools. Move-in ready, first year's rent paid. After that, we cover any amount above your current rent. You'll never pay more than you do now. If you believe no one should go through this alone, hit that like button now. At 20 years after Mike stopped to save Reaper's life, the impact of that single act had rippled far beyond one family's transformation. Mike was 58 now, still working as a nurse, but by choice, not desperation. His daughters were both established professionals. Emma was a successful civil engineer working on Detroit's infrastructure renewal projects, and Sophie had just completed her medical residency, following in her father's footsteps into healthcare. 20 years ago, I was drowning, Mike told a crowd of 500 at the Devil's Souls annual charity event commemorating the anniversary. Working 3 jobs, sleeping 3 hours a night, watching my daughters grow up from a distance because I was never home. Then I stopped to help someone bleeding on a road. That someone was Reaper. He didn't just thank me. He transformed our entire lives, paid my debts, gave my daughters education, gave me back my time with them. That's what honor looks like. The audience applauded, many crying, understanding they were witnessing the long-term impact of reciprocal generosity. Reaper, now 70 years old, and walking with a cane but still commanding respect as club president emeritus, stood beside Mike. Mike saved my life with professional skill and human compassion, Reaper said. He asked for nothing. That made the debt even more sacred. We spent 20 years ensuring his family thrived. But more importantly, his example inspired us to create Mike Stop, a program that's trained over 10,000 people in emergency response. Those trained people have saved an estimated 300 lives in accident situations. That's Mike's real legacy, not just saving me, but inspiring a movement that saves hundreds. Mike Stop had become a nationally recognized program, operating in 38 states, providing free training in basic life-saving techniques, tourniquet application, spinal stabilization, CPR, bleeding control. The program was funded entirely by Devil's Souls chapters and inspired donors, costing approximately $5 million annually, but saving lives daily. We're successful because we remember our foundation, program directors explained. Mike Chen stopped for a stranger and saved a life using basic medical skills. We're teaching those skills to everyone, making heroes out of ordinary people. That's Mike's gift multiplied. At 25 years, tragedy struck. Mike was diagnosed with stage 3 pancreatic cancer. Prognosis was grim, 12 to 18 months. He was 63, too young, too needed. The Devil's Souls mobilized immediately. Reaper, now 75 and frail himself, visited Mike in the hospital. Brother, we're with you, whatever you need. Best doctors, experimental treatments, whatever extends your time. We owe you that. You don't owe me anything more, Mike said weakly. You've given me everything. 25 extra years with my daughters that I wouldn't have had without your help. I'm grateful. I'm ready. We're not ready to lose you. Your family. We fight for family. The club paid for cutting-edge immunotherapy treatment at MD Anderson in Houston, flew Mike there monthly, covered all costs, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Emma and Sophie took turns accompanying their father, grateful for the Devil's Souls' continued support. The treatment bought time. Not a cure, but months, precious months. Mike lived to see Sophie get married, to meet his first grandchild, to celebrate Emma's promotion, to have moments he'd have missed without intervention. 16 months after diagnosis, Mike passed away peacefully at home. Emma, Sophie, their families, and 20 Devil's Souls members surrounded him. His last words were to Reaper, who'd maintained vigil despite his own declining health. Thank you for everything, for giving me 25 years I wouldn't have had, for letting me see my daughters succeed, for showing me what brotherhood means. I'm ready. Tell everyone, helping people matters. Small acts create big ripples. That's all that matters. Mike died minutes later, content, surrounded by love, having lived a full life that almost wasn't. His funeral drew 10,000 people. Largest gathering in Detroit history for a private citizen. Devil's Souls members from every chapter nationwide. People trained by Mike Stopp who'd saved lives. Accident victims saved by trained civilians. Medical professionals inspired by Mike's example. Ordinary people whose lives he'd touched. Emma gave the eulogy. Dad stopped to help someone 25 years ago. That person gave us everything. Dad taught us that kindness isn't transactional. You help people because it's right, not because you'll get something back. But the universe rewards kindness anyway. The Devil's Souls proved that. They gave Dad 25 extra years by removing his stress and desperation. They gave Sophie and me education and opportunities. They showed us what honor means. Thank you for saving our family by honoring Dad's kindness. We'll continue his legacy. We'll keep helping people. That's how we honor both Dad and the Devil's Souls. 10,000 people stood, 5 minutes of applause, understanding they were honoring not just Mike, but the principle he'd lived. Help people, expect nothing, receive everything. At 30 years after the rescue, Reaper passed away, 80 years old, heart failure. Peaceful death surrounded by club members and Mike's daughters, who'd maintained close relationships with the Devil's Souls for 3 decades. His last words referenced Mike. I lived 30 years past that accident, 30 years of riding, leading, protecting, loving, all because Mike stopped, because a stranger cared. I spent 30 years trying to repay that debt. Hope I succeeded. Tell everyone, when someone saves you, you honor them forever. That's brotherhood. That's family. His funeral drew 20,000 people. Emma and Sophie spoke, honoring the man who'd honored their father. Reaper gave our family everything, Sophie said. When Dad saved his life, Reaper could have just said thank you. Instead, he transformed our lives, gave us opportunities we'd never have had, showed us that gratitude isn't words, it's action. We're doctors and engineers because Reaper honored Dad's kindness. That's legacy. That's brotherhood. At 50 years after Mike's roadside rescue, the story had become legend in both medical and motorcycle communities. It was taught in nursing schools as an example of professional duty meeting human compassion. It was referenced in biker culture as the defining example of how to properly honor life debts. Mike's stop had grown exponentially, operating in all 50 states now. Over 100,000 people trained in 50 years. Conservative estimates suggested those trained civilians had saved over 2,000 lives in accident and emergency situations. The program's annual budget exceeded $50 million, funded by the Devil's Souls, government grants, and private donations from people inspired by Mike's story. The Mike Chen method, it was called officially, systematic approach to civilian emergency response. Assess, stabilize, support, simple but effective. Exactly what Mike had done for Reaper 50 years earlier. Emma Chen, now 82 years old, retired civil engineer, grandmother of 6, reflected on her father's legacy during an interview. Dad stopped to help someone when he was exhausted and desperate himself. That act of compassion created a chain reaction lasting 50 years. Reaper honored Dad by transforming our family. We've spent our lives honoring both of them by helping others. Sophie runs free medical clinics for underserved populations. I designed infrastructure improving safety and reducing accidents. Our children work in public service. That's Mike and Reaper's legacy through us, endless helping. Sophie Chen Williams, 80 years old, still practicing medicine part-time, running 3 free clinics in Detroit, agreed completely. Dad's kindness gave us everything, not just material things, though the Devil's Souls gave us that too. But the lesson, helping people matters more than anything, that strangers can become family. That honor means action, not words. We're living those lessons, passing them to our children and grandchildren. That's how legacies survive, through lived values. The Devil's Souls had evolved significantly over 50 years. Once feared outlaws, now respected community protectors and emergency responders. They maintained formal partnerships with police and fire departments in 40 cities. They were often first responders to accidents and emergencies, providing immediate life-saving care until professionals arrived. All because Mike had demonstrated that civilians could save lives, and Reaper had institutionalized that lesson into club culture. Mike changed us fundamentally, current Devil's Souls members explained. Before him, we were bikers protecting bikers. After him, we became community protectors, helping anyone in need. That's who we are now, forever. At 75 years after the rescue, both Mike and Reaper were long dead. Mike at 63, Reaper at 80. But their story remained culturally significant, taught in schools, referenced in community organizing, featured in documentaries about reciprocal altruism. The Chen-Reaper exchange, sociologists called it, perfect example of how individual kindness and collective gratitude combine to create exponential positive impact. One man stopped to save another. That other man mobilized a community to transform the first man's life. That exchange inspired a movement training civilians to save lives, which saved thousands more. That's geometric progression of goodness. At 100 years, the centennial was massive event. Devil's Souls chapters from across North America gathered in Detroit. Mike and Reaper's descendants attended, great-great-grandchildren now, carrying the legacy into 5th generation. Over 50,000 people participated in ceremonies honoring a century of mutual assistance and reciprocal honor. 100 years ago, Mike Chen stopped for Reaper, speakers declared. That stop created everything we see today. Tens of thousands trained in life-saving, thousands of lives saved directly, millions inspired to help others. Laws changed in 30 states mandating Good Samaritan protections. Global culture shifted toward valuing civilian emergency response, all from one nurse stopping for one biker. The site where Mike saved Reaper had been preserved, now state historical marker and small park. Here, November 15, 2024, Michael Chen stopped to save a stranger's life. That act created a century of reciprocal compassion and community protection. Stand here. Remember that stopping to help changes everything. At 150 years after that roadside rescue, Mike Chen's decision to stop for a dying stranger had become foundational mythology in American culture. The story was taught to children as moral instruction, featured in ethics courses, referenced constantly in discussions about reciprocal altruism and community responsibility. The Chen Principle, it was called in academic literature. The concept that individual acts of compassion, when properly honored and institutionalized, create exponential positive outcomes across generations. Mike stopped for Reaper. Reaper honored Mike by transforming his family's life. That exchange inspired Mike's stop. That program saved thousands. Those saved people helped millions more. Geometric progression of goodness. Mike's stop had evolved into Chen Emergency Response Network, global organization operating in 90 countries, over 10 million people trained across 150 years. Conservative estimates suggested trained civilians had saved over 50,000 lives directly in emergency situations. The network's annual budget exceeded $1 billion globally, funded by governments and private donations. Mike's methodology works universally, international emergency response organizations concluded. Simple techniques any civilian can learn, applied immediately at emergency scenes, saves lives before professionals arrive. This should be global standard. Mike proved it works 150 years ago. The devil's souls had been forever transformed by Mike's act and their response to it. Once outlaw motorcycle club, now internationally respected emergency response organization. They maintained formal partnerships with emergency services in 150 cities across 12 countries. They were often first responders providing immediate life-saving care. All because Mike demonstrated civilian response effectiveness and Reaper institutionalized it into club culture. Mike and Reaper changed us permanently, members explained. We're no longer just bikers. We're community protectors, emergency responders, lifesavers. That's our identity, that's our purpose. Because of one act 150 years ago, a 200 years after Mike stopped on Route 12, the bicentennial was a global event, every nation participating. 100 million people worldwide engaged in simultaneous ceremonies, honoring 2 centuries of civilian emergency response, inspired by one nurse saving one biker. 200 years ago, exhausted nurse Mike Chen stopped for dying stranger Reaper, world leaders declared in unison. That stop created 2 centuries of civilians saving lives, 50 million people trained, 100,000 lives saved directly, billions inspired to help others. Global culture permanently shifted toward valuing immediate assistance to those in need, all because one man stopped when he could have driven past. The Chen Reaper story had been enshrined in international law, Good Samaritan protocols, protecting and encouraging civilians who stop to help at emergencies. Mandatory training in basic life-saving techniques in 60 countries. Global culture valuing immediate assistance over convenient indifference. They proved 200 years ago that civilians can save lives, legal scholars explained. That communities must honor those who help. That reciprocal altruism creates better societies. That's permanent transformation from one roadside stop. Mike's lesson endures: stop to help, use your skills, ask nothing in return. Small acts create infinite ripples. Reaper's lesson endures: honor those who help, massively, permanently. Gratitude means transforming lives, not just saying thanks. Together they proved that one act of compassion, properly honored, creates centuries of goodness. 200 years, 100,000 lives saved, 1 billion people trained, all because tired nurse stopped for dying biker. That's the power of stopping. That's the miracle of honoring. That's the legacy that never dies. Thank you, Mike, for stopping when exhausted, for using your skills selflessly, for teaching us compassion matters. Thank you, Reaper, for honoring properly, for transforming lives, for institutionalizing gratitude. The lesson lives forever. Stop to help. Honor those who help. Small acts create infinite good. Never drive past someone dying. Never forget to honor helpers. Never underestimate one act's impact. Because Mike stopped. Because Reaper honored. Because 100,000 people lived forever. That's the truth. That's the power. That's the legacy. Stop. Help. Honor. Always.